assistant here is Rosie. Can you say hi? Hi! So today we are going to be making the perfect Mother's Day gift. So before we get started and go through everything that we need, first you're going to want a glass jar, either a mason jar or we're using an old spaghetti sauce jar. You could also use a pickle jar or any other kind of food jar. Just make sure that it is glass and not plastic because it's going to be going in the oven later. You're also going to want some rubbing alcohol and a couple cotton rounds. You're not going to want to use cotton balls because those fall apart very easily. You're going to need either a paint palette or you can just use a paper plate. Those work just as well. Either a wide brush or a sponge brush. A Sharpie or a, oh, thank you. Okay, thanks. A Sharpie or a thin brush. And a few different kinds of colors of paint, or you can just use one color if you'd rather just use one. We're using acrylic multi-surface paint. This way we don't have to use a sealant before we throw it in the oven. What? I know you want to paint, but you gotta wait for a second. If you don't use the multi-surface paint and you just use just regular acrylic paint, you're going to need to get a sealant as well. You're also going to want a baking sheet of some sort. And last but not least, ribbon of your choosing to match whatever color paint or paints you decide to use. So what we're going to do first... What? I know you want to paint. You want the purple one? Okay, here. Purple. Okay, so before we get started with the actual painting, we're going to take our rubbing alcohol and one of our cotton rounds. Hold on, baby. And we're just going to wipe the outside of our jar really well with the rubbing alcohol, and this is going to make sure that there is nothing stuck to it and get it good and clean. This will allow the paint to adhere to the glass better, which will, in the end, make it last longer. Alright, so now that we're done with that, put the lid back on our rubbing alcohol so we don't accidentally knock it over. Next, we're going to take our first color of choice, which Rosie has chosen eggplant as our first color. This hasn't been opened yet, so I've got to figure out how to open it. Let's make this so difficult. If I can get it open. Let's see here. I'm just going to unscrew the lid. I'm trying to do that. Alright, so you're just going to pour a little bit onto your paint palette or your paper plate. And look at that, she's already ready to go. So, there we go. Right, paint the jar. Paint the jar. So obviously, since you're working with paint, you're going to want to put something down, either newspaper or we're just using a regular washable placemat to protect your table, unless of course you don't care about your table or if it's like mine and you've done many art projects on it, so it doesn't really matter if it's protected or not. Don't do just the one spot. Do you want to do more? Okay, while she paints that, I am going to get my painter's tape and scissors so that I can create a window on the other side of the jar. You keep painting. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to be creating a window on the other side of the jar from where she's working. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my painter's tape. I'm going to get a few strips. Keep painting, baby. And I'm just overlapping them on each other, and then I'm going to cut out my shape after I've got them all overlapped. Almost done. I think one more piece will do it. You're doing a great job, baby. Okay, so see how I have overlapped the tape? This is going to allow me to get the shape that I want when I cut it. So I'm going to do a heart. I'm just going to cut my heart out. You can do whatever shape you want. You don't even have to do a window if you don't want to, but I think that it will look really cute. Then when there's flowers and stuff in it, you don't just see the top, you can see the you'll be able to see the stems and see if it needs more water and that kind of thing. So I have cut out my heart, and while she's painting on the other side of that, I'm just going to attach the tape to the jar like that. Alright. And that tape is going to get removed after the paint has all been applied and had a chance to dry a little bit, so that that one spot does not have any paint on it. Okay, you want to paint the other side too? You want to paint this side? Yeah. There you go. And as you can see, she can paint over the heart, and you'll see later that that's not going to get onto that spot or behind it or anything. You're doing a great job. It's going to be very pretty. Okay, get some on that side too. What's that, little one? This is Ileana. She wasn't in our last video, but she has decided to join us for this one. You want to do a different color? All right, all done with purple? Okay. All done with the purple. Okay, so now that she's done with her first color, we're going to go ahead and give this about 20 minutes to dry. That way it doesn't end up getting smeared and just turn brown. So we will see you in 20 minutes, which really won't be 20 minutes in the video. Don't worry, you don't have to wait that long to be able to see the rest of this. Alright, so we will be right back. Hi guys, we're back. Rosie, say hi.
Hi.
Alright, what color do you want to do this time?
Pink.
Pink, okay. So now the first layer of paint is good and dry, at least for the most part. We're going to move on to our next color. And Rosie picked pink, so we're doing pink this time. Let me get that back in front of you. Here you go. Let her paint that. Yeah, you're going to paint it. Yeah, you're painting.
Look at that guy.
So it took about, right about 20 minutes for this first layer to dry. If your layer of paint was really thick, you're going to have to give it more time. If it was super thin, it might not take 20 full minutes. You'll just have to judge that visually. And if you chose to only do one color, but you want it to be good and opaque, you don't want to be able to see through it, just go over it with another layer of the same color that you used. Make sure that if you do use different colors, that while you're waiting for it to dry, you go ahead and clean your brush off and your paint palette as well. And you can do that just using water and a paper towel. If it's really stuck in there, you can use a little bit of dish soap. Just make sure that you rinse it out really well so that there's no more soap stuck in the brush, in your brush bristles, or if you're using a sponge, there's nothing else coming out of the sponge. All done? Okay. All right, so now that she's finished with the paint, we are going, oh, you said you were all done. We're gonna go ahead and let that layer of paint dry, and then we will be back after it's dry. All right? See you in a minute. All right, we are back. Our pink is nice and dry, so we are going to move on to our next color, which is also our final color, using a soft blue. So we're going to go ahead and all right, paint you later. Okay, I think she is all done with the blue now, so we are going to go ahead and let this dry for another 15 to 20 minutes, and then we've got a few more steps to go. So I think right now is a good time to do lunch, right? What do you want to eat for lunch? You want some peanut butter and jelly? No? We'll figure it out. All right, we will see you soon. Say bye-bye. Hi guys, I'm back. So Rosie has decided that she is getting bored with this project, so I'm going to be doing the rest of it myself. But now that our jar is all dry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to locate that spot where I put the paint for the window, and on the opposite side of that, I'm going to use my Sharpie, or if you chose to use a thin paintbrush, you'll use paintbrush and paint instead. And I'm just going to write a message on the back. We say Happy Mother's Day. And if you're using the Sharpie especially, you're going to want to make sure that your jar is completely dry before you do this. Otherwise it won't work very well, and even then it's a little bit difficult to write over the paint. So it might be easier to use a paintbrush and paint instead of doing the marker. But I'm using the marker just for the sake of time, because I won't have to wait for more paint to dry before baking this. So I'm just going to write this on here real quick. Okay, that doesn't look like the most pretty writing ever, but Happy Mother's Day on it. So now we're going to take off the painter's tape that we put on back in the beginning. So just find a point that you think will be able to pull from, and just slowly peel that tape off. window. So it's going to allow a nice view of the inside of the jar. And if, I don't know how well you can see it, but our edges are a little rough there. So if you want to be able to clean up those edges, just grab a Q-tip and your rubbing alcohol and use that to go along your edges and get any paint that might have gotten underneath that tape. Okay, so the next step is going to be baking the jar if you used the multi-surface paint. If you didn't use a multi-surface paint, one that includes being able to be used on glass, this is where you will apply your sealant. Depending on what you kind of sealant, you just have to follow the instructions on that. After you apply your sealant, that is when we are going to bake our jar. So, you can see I have my baking dish. Excuse the mess in here, but you're going to want to make sure that you put it with the mouth open so that your heat is not getting built up inside of the dish. And then get into our oven. Place it in your oven. Do not, you're not going to want to preheat your oven when you do this, okay? So, do that, set it to 350, and you're going to want to bake it, turn my timer on, for 30 minutes, and just like I said, make sure that you allow your oven to preheat while your jar is in it. You don't need to have it preheated to 350 for, the full 30 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and let that bake for the next 30 minutes, and then we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. Timer just went off on the oven, so you're done baking our glass. So I'm just going to turn the oven off. Now we're not going to take the jar out yet. Instead, we're just going to crack it open and we're going to let it fully cool inside the oven. So just crack it open, turn your oven off. I have to say this just as a safety precaution. If you have little ones or pets that have access to your kitchen, make sure to keep a very close eye on them. That way they don't end up, burning themselves on the oven. That would be really bad. I would hate for you guys to end up having to go to the hospital or the vet because they got to the oven while it was hot. Alright, so just let that cool. It might take about an hour, but you want it to be cooled completely so that you can pull it out without, taking the chance of dropping it and breaking it because you accidentally burn your hand or something. Alright, so we're going to let that cool and then we will do the last step. Alright. Alright, hi guys. So our jar is nice and cool now. So now we're going to do the final step. If I can find, there's the ribbon, which is adding ribbon. So I'm going to make sure that I've got enough to go all the way around and tie a bow. And I'm just going to cut it down, cut the ribbon down to whatever length I want it to be. And what I'm going to do is position the bow so that it is on the same side as the window that we created with the painter's tape. If I could tie a bow, that would be awesome. Okay, so very small bow there, and you can just cut off more ribbon if you want a bigger bow than that, or less if you want a smaller bow, but it would be a lot harder to actually tie your bow if you use less than what I did. As you can see, it's a little on the small side, but it's okay. Alright, so now I have some water here. I can do this without spilling. Oh, I'm spilling a little bit. Oh well. Got our water, and then I went into our front yard, into my flower bed, picked these really pretty flowers. I'm going to put them in here. Situate them how they look best. beautiful handmade vase. And you can see that window works really well to show the water level and the stems and everything, so you're not just seeing paint and flowers. So there you go. That's how you turn a mason jar, or an old spaghetti sauce jar, or a pickle jar, or whatever kind of glass jar you want, into a beautiful Mother's Day gift. Alright, and just one last thing. When you clean this, you're going to want to make sure not to scrub it, even though it did bake, so you set your paint. Scrubbing it could end up making the paint come off. It is top rack dishwasher safe though, so it can be washed in the dishwasher. So yeah, there you have it. See you next time. Bye.